The regular season might be over, but now the real fun starts. The real season, the off season. And you know what? You got bowl preparation, you got the early signing period, you got the transfer portal, all that's coming together. Perfect storm all at one time. USC's roster, it's already taken a couple of transfer portal hits. I'm going to tell you who on this episode of Locked On USC.
You are Locked On USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on and welcome to Locked On USC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, also the #1 sports podcast network. So whether you're watching this show on YouTube, you pick the platform, you download this podcast, doesn't matter which one you pick, the show's always going to be free. This show will always appreciate your support. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Yeah, it's open season. The F word, full effect. Lots of different F words. Fluid recruiting, right? We know all about flip season. We know we like to use the F word when bad things happen, but we're not going to talk about that F word. Good thing, though, USC found King Miller kind of just hanging around, walk on, because one of USC's scholarship running backs, he's hitting the transfer portal. This is one of 4 names that is heading out of town. So, Brian Jackson, first man up. Last year USC lost Quentin Joyner, running back out of the state of Texas. He's now at Texas Tech. Brian Jackson, he was part of the 2024 recruiting class. He's now looking for greener pastures, and it's understandable. It really is. The way just things kind of shaped up. I don't know if Jackson's kind of reading the tea leaves. But, Waymon Jordan, Eli Sanders, those guys were brought in through the transfer portal. They both ended up hurt. Probably not going to play for the rest of the season. Maybe Waymo plays in the bowl game. I know for sure Eli Sanders is done. But he's going to jump into the transfer portal, Brian Jackson, when that opens up in January. He's made his intentions known. The last 2 seasons combined, Jackson has 72 rushing attempts, 311 total yards, 5 touchdowns. And literally 36 touches last year, 36 touches this year. A lot of the reason the numbers were lower this season, injury. He had a turf toe from pretty much all season long. And when you got turf toe, that's a hard injury to come back from, especially if you play running back. He came back in that game against Michigan. He probably came back too early, and it was out of necessity. Again, he wasn't even on the available list for that game. But USC, we've gone over this. USC made contact. They gave him permission. USC paid a $500 fine for having him on the list that he shouldn't have been on. Regardless, whatever. He wasn't ready to play then, and he's just kind of been toughing it out throughout the season since he came back for that Michigan game. And just to show you, how his numbers have kind of dwindled. A lot of it has to do with King Miller, obviously, but he never touched the ball more than 6 times in a game this year, and he was averaging like 3.4 yards per carry. So wasn't getting the job done. And again, most of that I think is due to injury. His best game this year was against Iowa just a few weeks ago when he had those 2 touchdowns in the red zone. USC needed those. So Brian Jackson, he's the first guy to throw his name into the hopper. The next guy, also on the offensive side of the ball, Xavier Jordan, DJ, wide receiver. He was part of the 2024 recruiting class. He's going to have 3 years of eligibility left. It never worked out for DJ at USC. He couldn't carve out a role on special teams as a returner, either a punt or kickoff return. I watched him go through those trials and tribulations at practice. During the portions of practice we were allowed to watch, he just didn't feel comfortable back there. He looked better this year than he did as a true freshman, but again, he wasn't going to get playing time over Mekhi Lemon, who was USC's punt and kick returner this year. And then when he did get his limited opportunities at wide receiver in 2025, again, hands just weren't working. That's just the best way of putting it. He caught 5 passes, 38 yards. Most of those came during Missouri against Missouri State and Georgia Southern and Michigan State. And that one catch he had against Michigan State, it went for 7 yards, but he fumbled at the end. He didn't touch the ball again after that. He got in the game a couple more times, but he wasn't targeted, never touched the ball again. So it's unfortunate. You got a local young man who was, top 100 come out of high school, but it just didn't work out. And it's not like USC doesn't develop the wide receiver position. So whether, you want to say, well, he was overrated, this is why I hate the star rankings, because the young men have to wear that around their neck. Oh, top 100 player, 4-star, can't miss prospect, right? Well, maybe not at USC, maybe somewhere else. I know Utah was in the running during his recruitment. I would be surprised if he doesn't end at Utah, so we'll see. But again, this is proof why you need to take those recruiting rankings with a grain of salt. Again, top 100 guy, wide receiver, USC, doesn't work out. So we wish him luck. Good luck wherever you end up. And so you got 2 guys on offense. We talked about Brian Jackson, talked about DJ Jordan. Well, defense took a couple of hits. First guy to put his name in the transfer portal, or at least make his intentions known, because that doesn't open up until a little bit later. In fact, I'll give you the exact dates coming up here in just a second. Braylon Conley, cornerback. So it's a little weird, right? He got a lot of reps in 2025. Got a ton of reps, especially when Chasen Johnson went down with injury. So next year, you got coming back, you got Marcellus Williams, who was a starter this year. I think everybody assumes Chasen Johnson is going to step into the vacancy that DeCarlos Nicholson is leaving behind. You got RJ Sermon, super guy, super stud who reclassified and showed up at the 2025 class. He's been practicing all year with the team. And then you got Elbert Hill coming in. You got Brandon Lockhart coming in. So maybe he's another guy who said, you know what? I see the writing on the wall. It might be best for me to leave. What's so interesting is I get it. Sometimes he didn't look really good in pass protection, but he's one of USC's more physical cornerbacks. He's great in run support. So whether it was the scheme where you have him playing 8 to 12 yards off the ball when you're trying to stop 3rd and 2, whatever the case may be, he just didn't always look comfortable in pass protection. Had his moments, but he looked much stronger in run stoppage. And then the other guy, Gus Cordova. This one's really weird to me. I don't know why he's doing it. Maybe it's homesickness, I'm thinking. But it's not like USC's edge production has been fantastic. He was a true freshman in 2025, 6'7", 280 pounds, roughly. You would think there's an opportunity there. But I think this comes down to USC has a really young defensive line room. You got some guys coming, some dudes coming in, and you don't have a spring transfer portal window anymore. So you have to make the decision now, because if you don't do it now, you're locked in for another season. And if you don't see yourself playing, now you're 2 years in, and when you're a competitive person, it's hard to sit on the bench. I'm not saying he wouldn't earn playing opportunities, but this was his decision, and he's doing it pretty quickly. So maybe he knows something. Obviously, he knows more than what I know. But again, we wish Gus a lot of luck. I was pretty excited when he when USC stuck with him, and he stuck with his commitment, and he saw his offseason workouts. The dude is he's a warrior in the gym. So he looks the part. Just it doesn't look like it's going to happen at USC. But that's the reality of college football today. Players are getting paid, and if there's not going to be a return on the investment, sometimes guys get processed out. So where you're thinking, well, why is this player leaving? Maybe he was getting a little bit of a nudge and a wink, wink. You never know. But again, the one I really don't understand, Braylon Connolly, he would be coming back as one of the more experienced guys. And then this one, Shane Cordova. I really don't understand. Maybe someone will reach out. I know a connection to that family watches the show every day. So maybe that person reaches out and let me know why this is happening, and I can pass that information along to you. But again, I wish Gus, I wish Braylon, I wish Brian Jackson, DJ Jordan, wish them all good luck wherever they end up. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. And again, today's world of college football, a lot of money involved between NIL and the revenue sharing. You got to run it like a business. You are literally running an NFL team at the college level now. So I think USC's running back room, it's going to be fine. You hate to see Brian Jackson leave. Now, wide receiver, that's another story. You're losing Mekhi Lemon. You're losing Jacoby Lane, more than likely. That's a significant amount of production that you're losing, right? You have Tanu Kynes, who's returning. He was the number 3 guy as a true freshman. He's coming back. I'm going to assume Zacharias Williams will be fully healthy by the time the 2026 season rolls around. So you got another guy with experience returning. And he was supposed to be Utah's number 1 wide receiver in 2025 before he left and came to USC. Does Prince Strawn return for his senior season? So Coach Riley has to decide, do you just want to roll with what you have, or do you want to go to the transfer portal and grab a guy like Nick Marsh from Michigan State, who's putting his name out there? He's jumping into the transfer portal. I know there's been communication behind the scenes. If you can get Nick Marsh, you bring Nick Marsh in. Dude's good. For those of you who are big fans of Juju Smith-Schuster, yeah, well, that's him. Same type of player. So again, you just have to decide. Got a lot of talent coming in. It's going to be young, but I think you need to go out and you need to get that veteran presence. And Nick Marsh is at the top of my list. Okay, right there. So you got him. You got the wide receivers coming in with the recruiting class. Guys like Booby Feaster, Trent Mosley. You have Luke Weaver, Roderick Tizano, Tron Baker. And then don't forget this. I'm telling you, there's a really strong feeling Caden Dixon-Wyatt, the commit to Ohio State from Mater Dei, he's going to flip on signing day to USC. So USC will survive at wide receiver regardless, unless the injuries just ravish that room. They'll be okay. Braylon Connolly leaving, again, curious just because of his experience compared to everyone else. But I still think USC is going to go out and get a veteran for that room also. Here's how the transfer portal works this year. So for the 2025-2026 offseason, it'll be open on January 2nd, and it remains open for 10 days. And that's different from last season when the portal opened in early December and lasted throughout the entire month. So I know the coaching staff loves this. There's no more second transfer portal in the spring. That's been eliminated. So if you don't take advantage of that 10-day window in January, again, unless you're a head coach leads the program, you're locked in. So that's why you're going to see so much movement. So again, those are the 4 guys who are leaving when I started recording this episode of Locked on USC. Who knows? Someone else might have added their name by now. There will be more. I promise you that. There will be more. It's not my place to mention names, but I would suggest the offensive line room's going to lose 1, maybe 2. Tight end is another position group. I think defensive line also. We know Gus Cordova's gone. So we'll see. This is why you're going to be locking into Locked On USC every day this week. Early signing period starts on Wednesday. Transfer portal, bowl preparation, everything's going on. This is your source for everything USC. And when you're done making Locked On USC your first listen every day, do not forget about the Transfer Portal Show with Brian Smith. And then when you're done with the Locked On Network, get on over there to wearesc.com. Got you covered with everything. So much written content, and Scott Schrader is your recruiting guru as well. Okay, 2 more segments to go. Next segment, talk about, can USC have a perfect signing day? It's possible. Very possible. And then third segment, what about the quarterback situation? That's something we got to talk about. Got to start looking into that a little bit. Sometimes the holidays can be a lot easier if you know what the perfect gift is. And Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple to give the perfect gift. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to a family member or to a friend, doesn't matter. Maybe you want to do to both. Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their front door. And this week is the best week to jump in because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. I love Omaha Steaks. So good, so tasty. The quality is exactly what you're looking for. Incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, and they have meals that make hosting or maybe just weeknight cooking that much easier. The quality is exactly what you want and what your friends and family will want as well. The variety, totally underrated. You got steaks, you got burgers, you got chicken, you got comfort meals, side dishes, desserts. It is literally one of those gifts that truly fits anyone's lifestyle. And if you want to give a great gift and save some big time money, then check this out. Visit omahasteaks.com. You're going to get 50% off site wide, and you're also going to get an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And also, you can get an additional $35 off if you use promo code college when you check out. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code college. Terms apply. See site for details. I want to say thank you again. I can never say thank you enough for making Locked On USC your first listen every day. And also thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Let me ask this question, kind of a hypothetical. What if USC's 2026 recruiting class bats 1,000? And what do I mean by that? It means UCLA sucks. But it means USC signs everybody who's committed to them. Now, I get it. Technically, they can't bat 1,000. Xavier Griffin, he decommitted way back in June. Didn't affect USC's #1 ranked recruiting class, though, did it? No. They still have the #1 ranked recruiting class, and we're less than 48 hours away, depending on when you're watching this episode, from the first day of early signing period. And then just recently, Jaquan Morris, the junior college transfer, USC dropped him when he took a recruiting visit to Illinois. Excuse me. So he broke the rule. I don't know. Regardless, USC isn't going to be able to bat 1,000 because of those two situations. That doesn't mean that they can't go, 98%. Look, check this out. What about these guys? Tell me who you think's decommitting or won't end up at USC. Mark Bowman, Elbert Hill, Booby Feaster, Luke Wafel, Kenai Pepe, Jamion Winfield, Talanoa Ely, running back Sean Alston, quarterback Jonas Williams, running back Deshaun Rideau, Tom, Brandon Lockhart, Vlad Diakonov, Samote Katuana, Uson Tafa, Josiah Jefferson, Trent Mosley, Luke Weaver, Peyton Dyer, Brett Colajay, Sean Scott, Braden Jones, Roderick Tizino, Jamiron Tron Baker. You got Cannon Smith, Joshua Holland, Andrew Williams, Madden Reardon. I know he ain't going anywhere. Jaden Crowder, Jake Johnson, Taylor Johnson, John Fafita, Chase Denise, and defensive tackle Malik Brooks. And as I mentioned in the first segment, I think USC adds Caden Dixon-White to this class as well. Possibly two more potential flips coming and joining the 2026 class also. However, of those guys that are committed, 35 guys, who do you think doesn't end up signing at with USC? I'm not going to throw out any names. I can see 2 or 3 in there that, okay, possible. But who do you think they are? Leave me a comment. Leave me a comment on YouTube. If you follow me on X, you can do that there. You can send me a message on Instagram. Wherever you can find me on social media, send me a question, send me an answer. And I might even make that part of the this weekly's mailbag. We'll see. But again, without me mentioning any names, I can see 2, possibly 3 guys who end up looking elsewhere. Remember, there's no spring transfer portal window. And I think that's going to play a major role here. So once you sign, once you commit with the early signing period, you're in for an entire year. You cannot jump into the transfer portal in the spring. It doesn't exist. So you might have some guys saying, all right, well, I'm not signing early. I'm going to wait till regular national signing day in February. Again, you don't have a transfer portal window to fall into, but at least it gives you an opportunity to really examine all of your options. And you can ask yourself, is USC the place for me? If you're smart, you'd say USC is the place to be. We'll see what happens. But again, the reason I feel so confident, this class is just going to stick together. One is because of the coaching staff. And yeah, you might see some movement with the staff, but I don't think it's going to affect anybody who's planning to come to USC. Also, not just the coaching staff, but let's just be honest about this. One of the big reasons why USC's recruiting class is ranked so high has to do with NIL. That's what it's all about. Yes, you recruit, but it's all about bidding. And if you want those elite number 1 players at each position, you got to pay for it. You just do. Let's not, try and believe. Let's not be naive. Let's don't believe otherwise. The reason you get a Mark Bowman and you're getting him over places like Texas and Georgia is because you're willing to pay for a guy like Mark Bowman to not go to Texas or Georgia and stay home and play for USC. The other reason why I think this class sticks together, a lot of playing time opportunities. Lots of playing time. It's going to be a young team next year. They were a young team this year. Be young again next year. So here, I won't tell you who I think won't show up, but I will tell you who I think can find their way into the rotation in 2026. I mentioned the name Mark Bowman for sure at tight end. We know Lake McCree, he's out of eligibility. Walker Lyons returns. But after, Lake and Walker, you didn't really get a whole lot out of the tight end room. Those guys were really productive. But, you've got Walter Matthews, you got Joey Olson, you got Nila Tapo. Who's the next man up? Do all 3 of them return? Again, just throwing it out there. I think Boobie Feaster, Trent Mosley, those dudes definitely have a chance to play at wide receiver next year. I think running back is also open season, without a doubt. Without a doubt. You got guys like Sean Alston, Deshaun Rideau coming in. You got King Miller. I hope he's returning. And then you've got Harry Dalton, Riley Wormley. Going to be crowded back there. Waymon Jordan. Can't forget that name. So we'll see what happens. But what about guys like Luke Wafel, Jamion Winfield, Tom Tapui? Can those guys crack the rotation? We know USC will play freshmen. They did it this year. Look, there's a great group of talent coming in. Does Talanoa Ely get some time at linebacker? We know USC needs desperate help at linebacker. Here's the thing. Some of these true freshmen are going to find their way onto the field because they're good. But everyone needs to understand this and remind themselves. True freshmen, they are not the cure-all. They are not the panacea. They're not going to fix the situation. They still need time to kind of, adjust to the college game. So, look, Jakeem Stewart, as talented as he is, you still had to allow him to kind of work his way up. And as the season went along, you started to see more of him. You're going to see a lot of him next year. You're going to see a lot of Floyd Boucard next year. So, yeah, there's room for these freshmen to play. Absolutely. All right, one more segment to go. We're going to talk about USC's quarterback situation and something we might want to take into consideration in 2026. That's coming up next. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever in the World Cup, it's going to be massive. You need going to be a lot of matches, right? But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part for these types of events. That's why the Gametime app is clutch. It's finally giving real fans the advantage, and it's going to give them a chance to actually snag some seats to these big-time World Cup matches. With Gametime, you can track the price drops in real time. You can get alerts when those great seats open up, and you can buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands, and it makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of, nearly impossible. You pull up the app, and the layout is going to make it really super simple to scroll through all those different matchups. You can compare the different seat views. Literally, you have it in the palm of your hands. Pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. There's going to be no confusion. There's no hunting for the fine print. The prices include the fees up front. So if I love that, I know you're going to love that. No last second surprises when you check out. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, or any type of event. Do that with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, Gametime. What happens if Jayden Maiava decides he wants to return to USC in 2026? I mean, let's say he decides he wants to, he needs one more year of seasoning before he jumps to the NFL. Now, all of a sudden, Coach Riley has a really tough decision to make. Hard choice. He has Husn Longstreet. He's quarterback on deck waiting for his opportunity. He kept his red shirt alive. He only played in 4 games this past season. But if I'm Husn, I would anticipate getting a really good opportunity in the bowl game. And that's going to jumpstart that 2026 spring quarterback competition. So you'll have Jayden, you'll have Husn, and then don't forget Jonas Williams, the incoming freshman. But again, the question is, what happens if, big picture, if Maiava returns for another year? Well, this is kind of where all of a sudden, if that domino falls, it affects stuff down the line. Obviously, Husn Longstreet is the next domino. If Jayden Maiava returns, he immediately becomes the front runner for the Heisman Trophy Award, right? I mean, who else would it be? Yeah, there's other quarterbacks around the country whose names will be up there. But we know what USC's passing game, what USC's offense is all about. I would imagine Jayden's name jumps to the top of the list with some other guys. But what about Husn Longstreet? If Jayden's coming back, Husn probably recognizes, well, he's the starter in 2026. What am I going to do? Am I going to wait for those spot opportunities, certain packages, bide my time? Or, is he going to be is he going to listen to people say, hey, you know what? I got an opening at my school for starting quarterback. We can pay you pretty well. Because that spring quarterback competition with Jayden returning doesn't happen. Jayden's the dude. So again, if Jayden decides he wants to return, and you want him to, right? You want to have the best experienced quarterback possible, but does that chase Longstreet into the transfer portal? And if it does, now you got to go get another quarterback out of the portal. But what kind of quarterback do you bring in? So you got all that playing around. There is another option for Coach Riley. And this is something where he would have to sit down with both Jayden and Husn. If Jayden says, I'm coming back, say, all right, well, what about a 2-quarterback system? Back in 2006, Tim Tebow, Chris Leak worked out pretty well. They won the national championship. 20 years later, why not explore that opportunity? Think about it. I mean, could do worse. You know Jayden Maiava is your starter, but now you've got different packages that you can bring in Husn Longstreet. Line him up at quarterback, line him up a receiver, maybe even in the backfield in a running back. All of a sudden, defensive coordinators are going, what the freak do I do with this? So now, if Maiava leaves, that's another way of looking at it. You've got Husn Longstreet, you've got Jonas Williams. Now Coach Riley has to go into the transfer portal for a quarterback who has some experience. So what kind of quarterback do you go get? So this situation is very similar to what USC was dealing with Miller Moss after the Holiday Bowl and with Jayden Maiava. It's kind of a similar situation. So again, just kind of prefacing it, throwing it out there, things to think about. We got a lot of stuff to talk about between now and then. USC, I think they're just officially waiting for their Alamo Bowl bid. Who they play, we'll find out. But a lot of stuff going on. Fun time of season right now. Bowl preparation, early signing period with recruiting, the transfer portal. It's a perfect storm. It's the perfect time for you to make sure you're locked in to Locked On USC every single day. So until that next episode, everyone, you know what to do.